Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Stephen Miller sounds off on these terrible reporters who are trying to catch him between a rock and a hard place. Not only is he not having it, he puts them in their place. Let's dive in.
Nobody was mistakenly deported anywhere. That's like the big fact that most of you have gotten wrong. No one was mistakenly sent anywhere. The only mistake that was made is a lawyer put an incorrect line in a legal filing and they've since been relieved of duty. He is El Salvadorian. He is an illegal alien. He was deported to El Salvador. I would welcome anyone here to tell me what country they think we should be sending El Salvadorian illegal aliens to.
Didn't a judge order that he not be deported to El Salvador 5 years ago?
So what you're referring to is an immigration judge. So that's Article 2, not Article 3. So there was no Article 3 restraint on his removal. A withholding order or a cancellation of removal order, first of all, as I'm sure you know, does not eliminate the deportation order, right? We all agree on that. So his status was he's an illegal alien who's been ordered deported, which means he can be indefinitely detained and removed to any other country in the world, right? He could be sent to literally any country on the face of the earth. But the preference, in general matter, is to deport someone to their home country, right? In this case, El Salvador. Because he is a member of a foreign terrorist organization, withholding orders don't apply to FTOs for obvious reasons. So if you had an illegal alien, say from Syria, who's a member of ISIS, they can't apply for withholding of removal. So that principle applies here. Furthermore, the gang that he said was going to persecute him, so this theory that he's an MS-13 and there's this rival gang, the 18th Street gang, doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. So the entire concept is false. If we deport, say, 100,000 people back to Haiti, should we open a case file on each of those 100,000 people and ask every day, what's their housing situation? What's their healthcare situation? What might they need? What might they want? Once someone's out of our country, that becomes the problem of their host country, not our country. These people chose to invade us. So there's a lot of concern from the corporate media about the invaders, but they chose to invade us. It's our responsibility to return them back to where they came from or another country willing to take them.
Stephen, is the president going to ask for him to be returned to the United States or not? Like, yes or no?
So first of all, it's not a question for me to answer, but I think that the assumption that underlies the question is what needs to be corrected, which is that there was no mistake that was made. He was sent, let me ask you, what do you think would happen to him if he came back to this country? As your understanding of immigration laws, what do you think would happen?
But I'm just asking.
No, it's important to know. You're asking a lot of questions. You are all asking a lot of questions about this, and you all seem to care about it a lot. So let's see if any of you have researched anything about this issue at all. Can anyone here tell me what would happen to the illegal alien from El Salvador if he came back to the United States? Does anyone here know? Does anyone want to guess? Any of you?
He could be with his family.
What does any of you know the answer to the question? Legally, what would happen if he came back here? Does any of you know? Any of you?
Do you really
you've been writing. I'm talking now. You need to stop. I'm talking now. Does any of you?
Why was it unanimous?
You're done. Does any of you know the answer to the question? Does any of you? You've been talking about it for days.
Would deport him again, no?
He would be arrested.
Okay.
He'd be put in confinement. He would be deported the second time to El Salvador again because there's no withholding order for an alien who's a member of a foreign terrorist organization, number one. Number two is the gang that he's a member of doesn't exist in El Salvador anymore. So what you're asking for is to be deported twice. But additionally, if we chose to just pretend that the withholding order was real, he would be deported to a different country. So, for example, he could be deported to Egypt. So I'm just trying to understand, is it your view, in other words, you have to find a country that would be willing to take a MS-13 member from El Salvador. So I'm trying to understand from you all is, so if he came back and under our laws he was then deported to Egypt or to Somalia, would you then be saying, great, I'm so glad that you deported him to another country? Is that what you'd all be saying? Do you understand our immigration laws at all? But the premise of your question, the gentlemen, the return, guys, do you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order? Do you know the difference? Any of you, please. Do you?
Well, we're not in the government.
But you couldn't even spend 72 hours over the weekend learning the distinction, even though you've been writing and talking about it this whole time. I'll just
Stephen,
everyone
we're
just
not
raise,
going
just
anywhere.
please,
On the
just
gold cards,
just
on the
raise
gold
your
cards.
hand. Does any of you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order?
How do you know that he's a member of MS-13? The White House has repeatedly said, according to intelligence.
By the way, according to our government and his government. In other words, his government has confirmed based on their own intelligence that he's a member of MS-13.
Y'all, we don't hate reporters enough. And there are some good ones out there. There are people who are actual journalists who understand what they're talking about. There are people like Matt Taibbi who put his entire reputation on the line to reveal the Twitter files. Okay? He was instrumental in that, along with Elon Musk, of course. But the reality of the situation is this. A man was entered this country illegally. He was loosely associated with MS-13. He got caught once during the Trump administration. He got released by a judge order. This time, however, he got caught for a second time, and then a judge ultimately said he has enough points to be deported, and so the Trump administration deported him. Okay, that is the sad truth of this situation. And turns out this guy actually has a very sad story. This dude apparently has been stalked multiple times by MS-13. He is actually not associated with them, according to his own testimony, and a couple of other witnesses. He turns out to be a good family man. So this is the first real story that the Democrats and mainstream media has that they can actually say, oh, look, Trump is deporting good people. Well, did you catch the problem to begin with? The dude was here illegally. Okay? He had no right to be here. He had gone through no system to be here. He had gone through no vetting to be here. He has flaunted our laws, and on one hand, it's good that he's been able to escape a worse country, but let's be honest, he is a legal resident of El Salvador. Buddy, I think it's time for you to return to your country. And the mainstream media wants this story to blow up in Trump's face because they're begging for anything to change the narrative and to get something that says, ew, Trump is doing something bad. Well, guess what? This is the closest they can get to a man who has crossed into this country illegally during the Obama administration, mind you, was caught once during the Trump administration, then had a judge essentially say, you know what, Trump, we're not going to let you do your job. And finally, there has been a new case that has been brought before the Supreme Court regarding this individual. And the Trump Justice Department is actually excited about this ruling. Here's what they have to say. Because, again, the ruling says that this dude needs to be returned to his correct position. This dude should not be in the prison system with the other MS-13 gang members. And so, this is what the Trump administration has to say about the Supreme Court. As the Supreme Court correctly recognized, it is the exclusive prerogative of the president to conduct foreign affairs. But this statement says, by directly noting the differences owed to the executive branch, this ruling once again illustrates that activist judges do not have the jurisdiction to seize control of the president's authority to conduct foreign policy. So translation, the Supreme Court said that this dude, even though he's an illegal migrant, needs to be returned to his correct point of origin. In other words, they're saying that this dude should not be in the prison system with that supermax security prison that Bukele has created that ultimately saved El Salvador. Okay? The guy does not deserve to be there. And so the Trump administration is working with the Supreme Court to come back and take this dude back, hold him, and then deport him properly to his point of origin. Folks, this is how the system is supposed to work. The Supreme Court says you can do X, Y, and Z, and the executive branch says, okay, we'll comply with X, Y, and Z. The Supreme Court can also do that to Congress when Congress is going out of line. This is our checks and balances working properly. But the mainstream media doesn't want to report on this part. They want a sensationalized headline that gets their viewers to go, how terrible! Someone was deported incorrectly? Well, we need to get up in arms and protest this. And as it turns out, this dude was already here illegally. Now, this dude does have a sob story, and I actually have some sympathy for him, for the guy. The guy turns out to be a pretty decent father figure, has been married here in the United States, although an illegal migrant getting married, you have to wonder if it's that illegal document to begin with. But that's a longer topic for a longer day, which then begs the question, is Trump going out of bounds. Well, clearly something got screwed up, something got crosswired, all because a lower court said that, hey, he matches the prerequisite orders to be deported, and so Trump correctly deported him. What they did not know at the time was the evidence that he was not actually a part of MS-13. So finally, our court system is actually working to get this dude some justice. This is something working, and these reporters don't understand the difference. They don't understand the nuances between legal and legal migration, okay? They haven't understood that for forever now. Then you've got these reporters, which, by the way, if you listen in on the audio, you'll hear them snickering and laughing when Stephen Miller says, "You're done." They're not laughing at the dude for asking a ridiculous question. They're laughing at Stephen Miller because they think they're better. They legitimately think that their freedom of the press is so paramount that they can escape any and all scrutiny. Well, folks, there's a new sheriff in town, and they're not going to be laughing for much longer. Okay, the reality is this reporter was a little out of line, asking a question that did not matter or pertain to the actual subject at hand. And furthermore, these reporters didn't know apples from oranges. This is the best the mainstream media can do. And they do this on purpose. They want these headlines. They want these sensationalized stories. And they want to ensure that their people that are reading their nonsense or sometimes watching their nonsense keep on tuning in and keep on getting fresh slop that has nothing to do with the reality. And the reality is this. The man that was deported was an illegal migrant. He has no ties to MS-13. So ultimately, this dude is going to wind up back in El Salvador because, thanks to the good work of Bukele, they're not having to deal with the violent crime anymore. This dude was literally trying to escape crime. He can now go back home. This is the kind of foreign policy I want to see, where these migrants get to realize that, oh, we can go home again. That's what I want to see, but let me know what you think should happen down in the comments below. I think Stephen Miller handled this correctly. I think the Trump administration is handling this right. I think Congress needs to get off their butts and actually write better legislation on how to deal with illegal immigration and, of course, their deportation. But again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.